The Young and the Restless Spoilers shock. For months now, Genoa City has been caught in the shadow of one man's ambition, a return that was supposed to be triumphant but instead spiraled into obsession, deception, and unchecked power. Kane's reappearance shocked those who once knew him as a family man, a businessman who stumbled but ultimately tried to do what was right. But this version of Kane is different. Hardened by years away and blinded by his own self-conviction, he's not merely trying to reclaim his legacy, he's trying to own the entire city. His scheme to consolidate power over most of Genoa's corporate landscape has turned old allies into enemies and has forced everyone, Lily, Jill, Devon, and even the Newman family, to ask how far he is willing to go to achieve domination. Yet what no one has realized is that the key to stopping him may not lie in the boardrooms or the courtrooms of Genoa City but in the quiet, forgotten corner of his past, his son, Sam. The disappearance of Sam from both Kane's life and the collective memory of those around him is more than a narrative oversight, it's a wound, a suppressed truth buried beneath layers of guilt and denial. Once upon a time, Sam was the symbol of Kane's greatest failure and his deepest shame. The child conceived through Kane's affair with Juliet Helton, born under tragic circumstances after Juliet's death, was the living reminder of a mistake that nearly destroyed his marriage to Lily. For a time, Kane tried to make peace with his actions, raising Sam alongside his twins, Maddie and Charlie, attempting to blend the fragments of two worlds that never fully belonged together. But somewhere along the way, that fragile balance collapsed. When Kane fell from grace, losing his job, his marriage, and his sense of identity, he also seemed to lose his son, not to death, but to silence. No one asked where Sam went. No one wondered if he was being cared for, if he grew up resenting the man who brought him into a fractured world, or if he carried his mother's quiet anger in his veins. Kane never mentioned him again, as though Sam's existence had been conveniently erased. But in soap operas, nothing ever stays buried for long, and The Young and the Restless has always thrived on the ghosts that return to haunt the living. Now that Kane is back in Genoa City, transforming from wounded exile to ruthless corporate tactician, the question resurfaces with sharper urgency: where is Sam? The fact that Kane never speaks his name is telling. It's as though Kane fears that invoking his son might awaken something: remorse, vulnerability, or even retribution. Because Sam isn't just a forgotten child, he represents the version of Kane that once knew humility, empathy, and guilt. The version that could love Lily and cherish family over profit. If Sam were to return, not as an innocent boy but as a grown man shaped by abandonment and anger, he could easily become the one person capable of dismantling everything Kane has built. Kane's empire may be fortified with money, manipulation, and connections, but it stands on a foundation of lies, and no one knows those lies better than the son he pretends doesn't exist. It's not hard to imagine Sam's story unfolding in the shadows. Perhaps Juliet's relatives took him in after her death, raising him far from the chaos of Genoa City. Perhaps he grew up hearing half-truths, how his father seduced his mother, denied her suffering, and vanished after she died. Or perhaps, in a darker twist, Kane secretly paid someone to ensure Sam's upbringing stayed out of public view, providing financial support while emotionally cutting ties to protect his own image. But that decision, meant to erase a scandal, might come back to destroy him. Because if Sam reappears now, angry, intelligent, and seeking answers, he could unravel not just Kane's emotional stability but also his financial empire. Sam's existence could invalidate parts of Kane's legal holdings, especially if Kane used false documentation or shell accounts to hide assets meant for his legitimate children. Sam might hold leverage Kane can't fight with lawyers or money, moral truth and biological connection. From a narrative perspective, Sam's return would symbolize poetic justice. Every downfall in The Young and the Restless has come not from external enemies but from the ghosts of the character's own making. Victor Newman's manipulations always circled back to destroy his family. Jack Abbott's pride often turned his victories to ashes. Kane, for all his schemes, is no different. His past has been whispering his destruction for years, and Sam's reemergence would be the moment it screams. Imagine Kane, standing on the cusp of seizing control over the city's major corporations, Chancellor Winters, Newman Media, even Jabbo through indirect leverage, when suddenly, a name resurfaces in the press, Sam Ashby. A young man claiming to be Kane's estranged son, returning not for inheritance but for truth. The story would spread like wildfire. In a town built on secrets, nothing captivates more than the child who comes back to expose the sins of the father. The psychological warfare that would follow could be devastating. Kane's greatest fear is not losing power, it's being seen for what he truly is. Sam's mere presence would force him to confront everything he has denied, his guilt over Juliet's death, his betrayal of Lily, his failure as a father. Even worse, Sam could align himself with those who already want Kane's downfall. Devon, still nursing resentment over past business betrayals, might see in Sam a chance to weaken Kane's influence. Jill, who has always balanced her affection for Kane with frustration over his mistakes, might finally choose loyalty to Chancellor Industries over emotional ties. And Lily, who has struggled to maintain her independence, could find herself torn between compassion for Sam and dread that his arrival will reopen wounds she thought had healed. The ripple effect would destabilize not only Kane's ambitions but the entire social order of Genoa City. Yet the true intrigue would lie not in corporate collapse but in emotional reckoning. If Sam returns as a man molded by pain, he could carry both the moral clarity and the manipulative instincts of his parents. Juliet's quiet resilience and Kane's cunning could coexist within him, making him unpredictable, a potential ally or a dangerous adversary. Perhaps he starts by pretending to reconcile, working alongside Kane in his corporate ventures, gaining his trust before systematically dismantling his empire from within. Or perhaps he doesn't seek revenge at all but redemption, only to realize that forgiveness is impossible when one's father refuses to admit guilt. Either way, Sam's story would give the young and the restless exactly what it does best, a generational mirror where the sins of the parents echo through the lives of their children. For viewers, Sam's reintroduction would also fill a long-neglected gap in continuity. Fans have long questioned the show's decision to erase him from the narrative. His reappearance would tie loose threads from the Juliet Helton arc to the current storyline of corporate warfare, transforming what seemed like a forgotten subplot into a critical turning point. Moreover, it would restore the emotional complexity that once defined Kane, a man torn between family and ambition, morality and manipulation. Over the years, Kane has oscillated between hero and anti-hero, but his current incarnation borders on sociopathy. Only someone who shares his blood, yet rejects his values, could humanize or humble him again. Sam's perspective? Growing up without a father, learning about the betrayal that destroyed his mother, and watching from afar as that same man now seeks power, would provide a compelling psychological counterpoint. It's possible that Sam has been watching all along. In a world where technology, surveillance, and business espionage dominate Genoa City's underworld, a character operating from the shadows could have quietly tracked Kane's rise. Perhaps he's been working under an alias, maybe even within one of Kane's own companies, waiting for the right moment to strike. The revelation that the person sabotaging Kane's mergers and leaking documents to the press is his own son would be the kind of jaw-dropping twist that defines the young and the restless. And it would drive Kane to the edge of madness. Imagine the irony: Kane, who thought he could control everything and everyone, brought to ruin not by his rivals but by the child he abandoned. Beyond the corporate and familial implications, Sam's return could also affect other storylines, creating ripple effects that touch Genoa City's broader web. If Kane's downfall exposes hidden financial ties between his companies and Newman Enterprises, Victor himself could become involved, turning the personal vendetta into a full-blown business war. Devon's moral compass would be tested as he weighs helping Sam for justice versus exploiting him for profit. Even characters like Nate or Audra, who thrive in moral gray zones, could find themselves choosing sides in a conflict that's as emotional as it is strategic. And yet, beneath all the power plays and dramatic confrontations, the heart of the story would remain achingly human. A forgotten son seeking acknowledgement. A father consumed by ambition, too afraid to look into the eyes of the child who represents his sins. A city that watches, judges, and feeds on scandal, because in Genoa City, redemption is as fleeting as love, and every victory carries the shadow of a secret waiting to destroy it. If the young and the restless chooses to bring Sam back, it wouldn't just be another twist, it would be a reckoning, a reminder that no matter how powerful a man becomes, he can never outrun his past. For Cain Ashby, that past has a name. And one day soon, the knock on his office door might not be a rival or a reporter, but Sam, older, wiser, and ready to demand the one thing Cain can't manipulate or buy, the truth. In the strange elasticity of time that defines soap operas, children grow up faster than the seasons change. One day they are infants barely able to form a sentence, and the next they are worldly teenagers with deep insights about morality, love, and betrayal. Sam Ashby, the long-ignored son of Cain and the late Juliet Helton, fits perfectly into that timeless paradox. Though technically he would only be turning 8 next month, the phenomenon fans jokingly call soap opera rapid aging syndrome could easily transform him into a teenager or even a young adult, old enough to look his father in the eye and question everything about the man he's become. The show has done this before, turning toddlers into university students overnight. So the idea of Sam returning to Genoa City as a sharp, emotionally aware young man is not only plausible, it's narratively perfect. In that case, Sam wouldn't just be a child with questions, he would be a voice of judgment, a mirror held up to Cain's greed, narcissism, and desperate hunger for validation. If the writers choose to bring him back, it's easy to imagine the impact of his words. He wouldn't shout, he wouldn't cry, he would dissect Cain with brutal honesty, with the kind of simplicity only someone uncorrupted by power can possess. He might mock his father's endless need to reinvent himself, to hide behind fake names and new corporate titles, as though identity were something that could be bought or rebranded. "Dad," one could imagine him saying, "do you really think pretending to be someone else or chasing after every deal will make you matter more? You've spent your life trying to win over people who stopped listening a long time ago." And with that, Sam would do what none of Cain's rivals could, pierce his arrogance. Because behind all of Cain's grand strategies and manipulations lies a pathetic truth, he's still trying to prove himself worthy of love, still trying to fill the emptiness left by every failure he refuses to acknowledge. The haunting part of Sam's absence isn't just narrative inconsistency, it's the silence. No one in Genoa City, not even Lily, has mentioned him since Cain's return. It's as if the entire community collectively erased the existence of a child who once symbolized scandal and shame. Even when Lily talks about family, about forgiveness, Sam's name never crosses her lips. The show has always been careful with omissions like this. What isn't said often means more than what is. The lack of reference to Sam suggests that his existence carries a weight no one wants to confront. Did Cain send him away to a boarding school in another country, hidden behind the justification of giving him a better education, when in truth it was to bury the living evidence of his betrayal? Did Juliet's relatives fight for custody, taking him away from a man who was too consumed by guilt to be a father? Or, in a darker possibility, did something happen to Sam that Cain cannot bear to face, a tragedy that everyone has chosen to forget rather than relive? The cruel irony of soap storytelling is that forgotten characters rarely stay forgotten forever. They return when the emotional temperature is right, often carrying the very key that unlocks another character's downfall. For Cain, Sam's return wouldn't just reopen an old wound, it would expose the infection festering beneath his current ambitions. The man who wants to rule Genoa City, to manipulate companies and destroy reputations, has built his empire on selective memory. He remembers his success, his charisma, his supposed redemption arcs, but not the broken promises that came before them. He remembers his marriage to Lily as a tragic casualty of circumstance rather than a consequence of his own choices. And most of all, he has erased the existence of the son whose birth destroyed that marriage in the first place. But soap justice always demands equilibrium. If Cain has spent years pretending that Sam doesn't exist, then Sam's inevitable return will be the universe's way of reminding him that no sin disappears simply because it's ignored. Technically, Sam's age gives the show immense flexibility. He could return as a sensitive, thoughtful preteen seeking connection, or as a brooding young adult ready to challenge the father who abandoned him. Either version would serve the story. In the first scenario, Sam could represent innocence and moral clarity, a young voice calling out the greed and hypocrisy surrounding him. His questions would cut deeper than any corporate scandal. Why is Cain never satisfied? Why does every victory only make him crave another? Why does he chase respect but run from love? Such questions would force Cain to face something no rival ever could, the possibility that the problem has never been external, but internal, a gnawing emptiness that no amount of money or power can fill. In the second scenario, a teenage or adult Sam could become an active participant in Genoa City's web of intrigue. He could join forces with Lily's children, Maddie and Charlie, creating an uneasy alliance of half-siblings united not by affection but by resentment. The tension between them, three products of Cain's contradictions, would be explosive, especially if Sam arrived determined to reclaim the acknowledgement he was denied. Fans have already begun speculating about Sam's fate. Some believe Cain sent him to live abroad, perhaps in Australia, where he could grow up away from gossip and scandal. Others think Sam has been under the guardianship of one of Juliet's distant relatives, shielded from Cain's influence but raised on stories that painted his father as a selfish manipulator. In either case, the emotional outcome is the same, a child who grows up feeling unwanted. And when children feel abandoned long enough, they stop yearning for love and start seeking power. If the show decides to age up Sam into adolescence or young adulthood, it's not difficult to see him returning to Genoa City not as a victim but as an accuser. Maybe he arrives quietly at first, observing his father's empire from the outside, slipping into town under a different name. Maybe he works for one of Cain's competitors, feeding them insider information. Maybe, like his father, he's learned to weaponize charm. The ultimate twist would be if Cain, always hungry for capable allies, hires him without realizing who he truly is, only to discover the truth after it's too late. But beyond the speculation lies the moral center of the story, the idea that the past is never truly gone. Every lie Cain told, every betrayal he justified, every heart he broke, they all still exist, waiting for the right moment to return. Sam's absence has left a narrative vacuum that screams for resolution. Even characters like Jill or Devon, who once defended or condemned Cain in equal measure, seem oddly uninterested in what happened to a child connected to both tragedy and legacy. The collective silence suggests denial, not closure. If Sam returns, his first question might not be "Why did you abandon me?" but "Why did no one care enough to ask where I went?" That question would sting the entire town, exposing not just Cain's neglect but the hypocrisy of a community that prides itself on family values while turning a blind eye to inconvenient truths. What makes this potential storyline even richer is its psychological dimension. Cain's entire identity has been built around reinvention. He's a man who thrives on second chances, on rewriting his own history. He faked identities, forged documents, and manipulated perceptions, all to control how others see him. But Sam represents something uncontrollable. He is the one person who sees Cain without filters, without illusions. To Sam, Cain isn't a powerful mogul or a misunderstood hero. He's just a man who made choices that destroyed lives and then tried to bury the evidence. If the show embraces this dynamic, it could push Cain into one of the most profound breakdowns in The Young and the Restless history. A confrontation with Sam wouldn't just threaten his career, it would threaten his sense of self. And that's where the most compelling drama lives. Imagine a scenario where Cain's latest business move, a merger meant to consolidate his dominance over Genoa's industries, is sabotaged from within. Financial reports leak, partnerships dissolve, and his reputation begins to crumble. Then, just as he scrambles to find the traitor responsible, Sam steps forward. The reveal would be stunning, not because of the betrayal itself but because of the emotional weight behind it. Sam wouldn't destroy Cain for money or revenge, he would do it to force recognition. To make his father finally see him. That's the tragedy of it. Sam's vengeance would be born not of hatred but of longing. And Cain, for all his intelligence, would never see it coming. He's spent so long battling external enemies that he's forgotten the most dangerous ones are always the ones you create yourself.